Hello everyone and welcome to another lesson in this OpenGL series. Now in this lesson I would love to cover with you a couple things here. I would love to cover with you texturing and lighting. Now textures and lights are very important and essential elements in our application. I mean, you cannot tell that a sun is a sun or earth is an earth without having a texture on them. You cannot say this is a wood or this is a brick without having a texture on it. You cannot say this is a metal and this is plastic without describing a texture and a material, of course, for it. So there are a couple stuff that you have to give some certain texture in order for the user or for the people who are navigating into your virtual world which you have built. They have to understand what are the elements which you are using. Are you using rocks? Are you using woods? What are you using exactly? So in this lesson we're gonna cover textures, so you can define how your objects are gonna behave. Let's say, I mean, not behave, how they're gonna look like. Not in terms of model or the shape. I mean, talking about in terms of what they are, defining them, and lighting in order to light our scene up. So we have some certain light sources. We can make lamps. We can, for example, simulate if the sun will shine it will shine light, then there will be a shadow, and so on and so forth. So we really need to get start working with textures and lighting. Now, first of all, let me cover textures. Now, textures is quite easy. So we have three types of textures. We have 1D textures, so one-dimensional texture. We have 2D texture, and we have 3D textures. Now, 1D textures is the gradient. Now, let me bring up Photoshop here, and I'm gonna draw a small selection here, and I'm gonna go for. Oh, let me see. I cannot. As a matter of fact, as far as I remember, it was like G. And if I click and drag, this is a gradient. This is a one-dimensional texture. So we're talking about a texture that is shifting from one color to another color. Okay. Another thing you have to understand about textures, we have 2D textures which we are gonna use, which is most people in production, in movies, in games, they are using 2D textures, which are any image that you can see, any image that is of two-dimensional. So we have X and Y. So a picture that you took from outside, a picture of a wall, a picture of whatever it is, anything is going to be like, anything of that sort is going to be 2D. A 3D texture, you can imagine it as a wood grain or a marble, marble grain or wood, for example, like or marble veins, excuse me. So a marble vein, if you are, for example, cutting wood, every slice that you're gonna cut, you're gonna actually see a new texture from the surface. You know, like imagine that you get, for example, some sort of like a huge tree, and when you chop it in half, so you cut it in half, you get some sort of circles, you know, around the place where you have cut. Now, when you cut that, when you slice even a little bit, like you cut one more slice out, you get even a different, almost like different formation of a circle. That is because your circles are happening to be in X and Y, just described so, and as well the texture is flowing in Z direction or in depth. So that's why when you cut all the time such pieces of wood, or if you're cutting the marble every time, you get even different formation every time, because your textures is flowing in X, Y, and even inside. So it's going to be flowing in Z. But most of these 3D textures are actually being calculated mathematically. So there are mathematical formulas that calculate such textures, because you cannot describe them through pictures. You have to get really a math formula in order to do that. Okay, so let us get started with the basics. So for example, textures, how do they work? Oops, sorry, D, backspace, and X, backspace, here we go. So how textures are working. Now in OpenGL, as for any 3D application in the world, like OpenGL, Maya, okay, OpenGL, this is not application, this is an API, excuse me. Maya, 3D Max, Cinema 4D, Blender, I can actually go on, XSI, I mean, there are tons of them already. All of them, they are relying on a texture map that mapped from 1 to 1. So the maximum, oops, excuse me. So the maximum square which you're gonna work with is gonna be a square of 1 to 1. So this is gonna be like, if this is gonna be my texture, let's say, let me try to do something here. Let me see. I'll try to make up something here quick. In fact, I'm gonna even put it in another layer, so it's gonna be even much more fun. I actually took the same texture on the class, which is kind of worked fine for me, and probably it will work fine for you as well as worked fine for everybody on the lesson. And we have like 2 circles here. I don't care about the positioning, but somehow it ended up in strangely. And let me see here, something like so. Alt and click, so we subtract, so we get some sort of weird smiley face. Anyway, this is actually my smiley face. So if this is my texture, this texture has actually to fit in 1 to 1 square. If you really don't know what I'm talking about, let me put even this to gray a little bit so you can differentiate it from the background. Oops, sorry. New layer, background, throw this in the back. So we have this face happen to be in between this guy. So if let me pick up a pen here, like brush. So this has to be 0, oops, let me put this to D, 0, comma, oh, this is gonna be not working at all, comma 1, oh, excuse me, 0, comma 0. This is, since we're talking about x, 1, comma 0, and this is 1, comma 1, and this is 0, so this is 0 and 1. I'm drawing with mouse here, bear with me. So if you really don't understand what I'm talking about, if you go to Maya, let's say, and here you go, UV texture layout. If you're gonna look to your texture layout, any texture which you're gonna create, it has to be fit from 0 to 1, 0 to 1. And even as you can see here in the 3D application, we are using as well this square only 0 to 1. Now for the other 3 quadrants, right now you are entering advanced texturing techniques, which actually I'm not gonna cover here. But in most cases, I mean in any case what you're gonna do, please always make your textures covered up right here, alright, in this square. So this is actually what is happening. So let me get rid of Maya here. So there are a couple of stuff that you have to understand about how textures actually work. Let me go and hide this. So press the space key to move around. Okay, let's say that my face. Oops, sorry. Apparently I was drawing on a. Okay, apparently I was drawing, let me draw on a different even layer so we won't spoil the face thing here. And let me go for a pen. So as we agreed here, we have 0, comma 0, 1, comma 0, 1, comma 1, and 1, no, sorry, 0, comma 1. So usually when we are working in OpenGL, we are referring to these axes, something which is called S, and this is called T. Do not confuse yourself a lot. This is Y, and this is X, alright? There's nothing fancy there. It's just a small terminology for the S and the T here. So this is the equivalent of Y, this is equivalent of the X, and nothing else. So you're gonna find people are talking about UV coordinates. This is the same thing, so UV coordinates is the same as S and T. So people are gonna call sometimes this S and T, some people are gonna call U and V, so please so take care about these couple keywords, which you're gonna meet a lot in books. So this is S and this is T. Okay. Now, if I am getting, for example, my texture, let's say I didn't apply my texture yet. Let us say this is my polygonal surface. So this is a single polygon, All right, this one is my single polygon, and I have to texture map this little guy in here in this square. In order to do that, you have right now to specify the texture coordinate using the function which is called glTextCoord. Okay, you use it coord 2D because you have 2D texture, 1D texture, and 3D texture, so take care. So tx coord 2D, all right, and then you specify for every vertex what is going to be his texture coordinate. So if I specify, let's say, this square, this position of this vertex is going to be whatever number, the position here and the position there, it's going to be whatever number you like, okay? But I would love to position this texture, excuse me, I would love to position this texture on that polygonal face. Now, if I say to this vertex your text coordinates is going to be, texture coordinate is going to be 0, 0, I'm going to come here for this texture, I'm going to say texture coordinate is going to be 1, 0. Your texture coordinate here for you guy is going to be 1, 1. And for you young man is going to be 0, 1. If I say so, then my texture is going to be applying perfectly or fitting perfectly, let's say. Okay, I'm going to try to fit it as much as possible as I can here in Photoshop. Okay. So it's gonna actually fit perfectly in my texture, on my polygon. All right, so this is I fit already my texture in here. Okay, so he looks creepy. Anyway, so right now this is my texture applied to my polygon. But what happens if I say, let me go here, excuse me, B. Let's say I'm gonna put here 0.5. and I'll scrap this. I'm gonna put here 0.5 and scrap that. That's gonna be 0, 0.5. If I do so, then I'm gonna have a completely different effect. Excuse me. Oh man, I just selected the wrong texture. Add wrong layer. Hold on a second. Keep up with me, guys. Sorry. Okay. If I move this guy, alright. So let me select that layer. So these are the new coordinates. So again, whoops, sorry. Well, I selected it. Clone stamp. Oh, sorry. 0.5 and of course comma 0.5. Erase this 0.5 and of course here's gonna be, excuse me, here's gonna be 0. So erase this B 0. 0.5. Alright, so if I do that, what's gonna happen is I will get such an effect. I will in fact get a small quarter of my image. So if you slice this face in quarter, let's say like so, anything was gonna show up inside that thing. So inside that so here's my polygon, as you can see here, and here's the quarter of my face. This is exactly what I'm gonna see. Of course the rest is not gonna be there, but this is what I'm exactly gonna see. So if I just invert my selection and hold on a second, select that, delete, Control D, this is what I'm gonna get. This is how my texture is gonna look like because I gave 0.5 and 0.5 and 0.5. Now if I say B, so B for brush, okay, so 2, 0, scrap that, so 2, 0, and this is gonna be, sorry, 2, 2 here, okay, and 2, actually 0 for Y, and 2 for X, okay, or 2 for T. Now, when I'm gonna get this guy's gonna be rendered, oh man, again, it doesn't matter. So this guy is gonna be rendered in the, let me just even erase this. So I'm gonna press E and just take this out. Alright, so right now I gave actually a new coordinate, so please just imagine that with me. So I gave a new coordinate for the S and T, so I have right now a So right now I have a small nice little circle. So now I'm gonna scale it down. In fact, when I do that, when I put 2, I'm gonna get the circle just rendered right here. And the funny thing, if you specified it to be so, it's gonna be some sort of like that. So it's gonna be actually duplicate here. That if you say repeat in S and repeat in T, which is actually happening by default. Now, in case that you could say repeat only in S or repeat only in T, what you're gonna get is just your pixels are being stretched like so. So for example, I get this guy, and for example, stretch him really back. I mean, not this texture, excuse me. Is gonna be the last pixels here are going to be completely stretched here, the last pixels are going to be stretched there, and the last pixel of here is going to be stretched there, in case if I didn't say repeat in any direction. If I say repeat in S only, so it's going to be repeat upwards, and whatever here, I'm going to just stretch it here, and so on. If I say repeat in T only, everything going to be repeated normally, but anything upwards is going to be stretched, so you're going to get awkward effects. So anyway, when you're specifying such numbers such as coordinates, so this is satisfying the coordinate of sorry, this is 0 0, do not touch. This is going to be 2 0 2 2. Okay, scratch that, and 0 2. Okay, this is actually how textures are specified or mapped. This is called texture mapping right now. So how to map your texture above your object. Okay, so let me go and delete all this. So hide all this. In fact, I'm gonna even delete them. I don't need them anymore probably. Okay, so delete that as well. New layer, please. Now, a couple of stuff you have to understand about how texture is actually working in the memory, because in order right now, this is talking in code here. Oops, sorry. V and control click and go here away. If I would love to apply a texture on this polygon, I have right now to start working on some several stuff. Right now I have to specify several steps here. Now, first step is, of course, you specify the texture coordinates and so on. Second thing, please do not forget to enable. So you say gl.gl enable between brackets texture gl underscore texture 2D. Please do not forget that. Then we're gonna call a function called gl gen textures, which is gonna generate textures. Now, right now, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna say when I say gl gen texture, imagine that I'm specifying an array. Alright, this is my array, and let's say I'm gonna say please make a texture of let me go here and to my layers, hide this guy. So I'm gonna say this is gonna be my array. Oops, sorry, and even undo that, undo this one as well. So this is here and this is there. So this is my 2 elements, or excuse me, 3 elements of array. Okay, let me erase this and erase that part. KB. So this is my array, and I say gl gen text. So if I say here, let me put here on a text. Give it a second. So GL, oops, sorry, that's quite big. Let me put here to 712, let's say, and I'm gonna put here Verdana or whatever, and let it be a little bit larger. So if I say GL dot GL gen dot GL gen textures, apparently textures, and this is gonna be gen, not M. It's a completely different thing. Of course, L, please. Oh my God. Okay. And here I'm gonna specify how many textures that I would love to work with, and I have to pass him an empty array. So I'm gonna pass him here an array. All right. So this is how your code should look like. So you're gonna define a texture. You're gonna say I'm gonna make an array of textures. So let's say in this part I'm gonna make 3 textures. I would love to work with in OpenGL with 3 textures from now. So I hand him an array of texture, an empty array, and OpenGL will automatically generate for me 3 unique IDs. So if I say that these 3 unique IDs are gonna be, for example, let me select this little guy B, and I'm gonna say, let's say it's gonna be 2, 3, and 4. So right now I got 3 different IDs, 3 unique IDs. Okay, I don't know what these are IDs, I don't care what they are, but there are already 2 or like 3 unique IDs. The next thing, I'm gonna call something which says GL bind texture. Now when I say GL bind texture, I have to specify the type of the texture which I'm gonna work with, which is gonna be 2D texture, and I have to say which element of the array I'm gonna use. So if I'm gonna type this really slowly, so gl.gl bind, oh my god, hold on a second. So bind texture. Okay, inside here you're gonna say I'm working with 2D texture. I'm just writing this for the sake of space, and here I'm gonna say which element of the array. So I'm gonna say which texture I would love to assign to, which ID I would love to assign to. So for example, if I have a wood texture and I would love to assign it to element number 3, I just have to remember that. So I'm gonna say my array, which is the array, and I'm gonna pass it there 3. Oh, excuse me, here's gonna be 2, sorry, because I'm passing the element of my array. Okay, and close your brackets, and so on. So here I'm gonna say, okay, I would love to work with, I would love to assign the second element of my array, which is this one. Okay, so this is my second element of the array is gonna be number 3, and so this is where I am right now. I'm pointing to this. Okay, so I assign my texture. Right now I'm gonna say I'm gonna work with the 2D texture, and this is gonna be the second element of the array here. Okay, and then I'm gonna have to load my image. Now OpenGL never understands, so here you load. Okay, never, OpenGL doesn't understand JPEG or PNGs or any of this. It just understands raw data. So right now you have to get some certain libraries in order for it to work for you, in order just to unpack or extract using the algorithms of extracting images, let's say JPEGs, and JPEG is actually a compressed format. Right now it has to be extracted and it has to be sent to OpenGL in order to load the texture on your video card, because whatever you're going to extract, I mean these data, when it's going to be extracted in your memory, they are actually going to be loaded onto your video card. Okay, just to make it just for very fast access. So we're gonna have our array is gonna have an ID, and this ID is gonna be binded to a texture. Okay, and right now later on I have to call gl text image 2D, and then I'm gonna fill in, and then I'm gonna pass the pointer to the first pixel, or to the first unsigned byte of my image raw data. So right now the GL texture image 2D is gonna actually take that pointer and then goes through the whole raw data and upload it sequentially, just uploads it to your video card memory. Okay, now you can actually go further and say, okay, I would love to bind texture again to number 4, to number 2, or I mean to the 0 elements, or to the first element. Excuse me, this should be like 1. Sorry about that. This is a 0 based array. This is my rookie mistake. Sorry about that. So this is 1 and this is 2. Okay, so since I'm talking about number 3 here, so if I would love to assign to the second element of my array, it's gonna be here 2. If I'm gonna assign to the first element of the array, it's gonna be 0. Now I made for you a small library texturing for textures. You're gonna always pass 0 here, because I made for every object we're gonna have a single texture, because I made it as much as possible object oriented. So for every object you create out of class texture is gonna be assigned only one texture to it, so you're gonna always put 0 in here. Okay, let me go and show you what I'm talking about. Let me go first to the texture test. So this is my texturing testing class here. I just created a new texture object. Okay, before I go further, of course, please do not forget to download the textures from the DL materials. You have the texture library, you have to import it here. Okay, you have textures.dll. You just download it, add the reference here. Once you do that, do not forget to using textures. Then you say texture, so I'm created just a new object called texture. I instantiated inside my constructor of my form, so texture equal to new texture, and then I specified the earth map for now, since my project has inside in the same folder, open in Windows Explorer, inside the same folder in here, dependencies, no backup, texture test, bin, and debug, and here's my earth map. So this is my earth map. I would love to apply it to, here we go, I would love to apply it to my my sphere. Please make sure that your textures are always power of 2. This one is not, but it doesn't matter. I mean, it happens automatically that OpenGL wraps it correctly, but in most cases, please make sure that your textures, all of them, are in the power of 2. What I'm talking about is power of 2 is going to be 128 by 128 until 1024 by 1024, and please do not reach that number. Okay, maximum number that you can get, like 512 multiplied by 512. I mean, do not really get so much big size, because it's gonna be really slow. I mean, right now in the current age where we use video cards, our video cards are really powerful, but imagine that you have, let's say, 100 objects. If your object has its own texture, it's gonna be a really difficult time for a video card to handle it. All right, so I create a new texture. You give the path of your image. In case of the path of the image beside the exe file, then just no need to specify the whole thing. So you don't say C, I don't know, program files and so on and so forth. And here I'm gonna say it is a 2D texture. Now once I do that, before I render, this is GLU way of rendering or of making a sphere, so do not worry about that. I mean, you can use GLOT as well to make a sphere. It's gonna work out in the same way. And I just say, before I render my object, I say GL bind texture. Texture type is gonna be a 2D, okay? And then always you're gonna pass this 0. Always you're gonna say this. This code is gonna be the same all the time, okay? Because for the class, how it works is that you create an object for every texture, so you're gonna be always having 0. You will never have 2 textures per 1 object or something like that. In case that you would love to do, or would love to give such a capability for any kind of reason, feel free to take the source code, which you're gonna have as well to download, and modify it as you want. All right, so let me Control F5 this, and let's see what's gonna happen. Give it a second, and here is my Earth is rendered, and it's rotating accordingly. So this is how actually to apply textures to your objects. Now, of course, most probable you will not actually make this. I mean, most of the time you're gonna use Maya in order to model your objects, and then use the OBJ loader to export them, and then the OBJ loader will handle the texture mapping, applying texture to your object, and even rendering it for you. So there's no need to worry about the details of this, guys. I mean, binding textures and so on. But you have to know this, because sometimes you could have needed to do something like Earth, for instance. Since, as you can see here, Earth, I don't need to go to Maya and model it, and then, I mean, after modeling it, apply texture for it. Well, I can just do it here in code, right? So you can do that actually manually, as well as understanding how texturing works from the background. How actually working, what's happening behind the curtains, gives you the capability of making it a lot easier for you to debug your application in case you have weird texturing effects or so. Okay, This is actually for texturing. Hold on a second, let me show you the code for it. So if I go for textures, okay, forget about all this. Here is where is the magic is happening. So this is where I'm actually loading the image and creating a 2D texture out of it. Bitmap and bitmap data is the two classes which are helping me in order to import to load image files. All right, and feel free, of course, to observe. I mean, I got this from MSDN. I mean, I learned about it from MSDN, so feel free to go to MSDN and read more about these two classes. They are quite interesting. And then I had to flip the image because OpenGL reads them in a little bit inversed way, so I have to restore them back as they should be. So I'm here to say gen texture, so I'm using one texture, so one texture per one object. And this is gonna be a 2D texture. I'm saying here min and mag filter for magnifying and magnification, like of images. If in case I'm applying the image, a huge image on a small object, here is gonna be scaled down in a linear way, so I get a smooth effect, not quite jaggy or some such strange artifact. The same thing here, if I'm applying a small texture on a huge object, it's gonna be scaled and smooth. The texture is going to be scaled and smoothed accordingly. Here GL text 2D, so I'm applying 2D textures. It's going to be RGBA, taking the width and the height of my image which I loaded from the file and sending it unsigned bytes. And I'm sending here the first pointer. As you can see here, this is the address of the first pixel of my data, which OpenGL is going to take and then start loading now actually textures are being loaded into my into my application, or it's actually loaded onto your video card. All right, I will stop actually here. I will split this. I will just go to the lighting in the next lesson. So thanks a lot for your attention, and see you in the next lessons.